Okay, let me see if I'm live everywhere. How's everybody doing out there? Not quite sure if I exist yet on the web. Okay. Yep, I'm up here. And then, okay. Right, how are you doing this afternoon? Nice and sunny where I am right now. Right, how are you doing this afternoon? Oh, they got some feedback. Okay. All right. So, hi. Welcome to another live Farmer Spreadsheet tip. Second week in a row. We're back on business. Used to do this a while ago, and I'm excited to be doing this again. And today, I'm doing this to kind of, to help farmers out, figure spreadsheet stuff, but also to kind of try out and explore new ideas. And so this tip that I'm going to work with today, somebody was contacting me and asking about creating order labels from their online store, and they use a local line online store, and there's different ways the information is presented, and they want to print out labels that they're going to have the name and order number and amount owing and all that kind of stuff on the label. And one of the challenges that they were having is that there's a lot of different products so it's easy if you can export your orders from an online store into a CSV file. And then with the CSV file, you can do all kinds of things. And so if you bring it into a Google Sheet, you can then activate certain apps which will let you print labels. There's one called Autocrat, Avery. There's some other different ones. And you would just kind of associate different fields to the labels. But what got tricky is that there's a lot of different products and how to represent those. And so with this tip today is I'm going to show so last week we looked at a CSV file entered into a harvest list. Today what we're going to look at this another CSV file from another online store and how to consolidate the information so that it's easy to represent the products and quantities on your on a label that you might share, that you might print and then put on a board. On a box with the stuff inside it. And so last week we looked at a Shopify CSV file. This week it's a local line CSV file. So this was something that somebody shared with me. I changed the data so that there's no personal information in it. And you'll see that there's some similarities with them. And we're going to go into that. So I'm going to jump into my screen right away into the spreadsheet. So if you want to get the same spreadsheet, you can go to spreadsheet.farm/FSA031, and that'll bring you to the sheet that I'm going to look at right now, and I'll walk it through. And yeah, so Jason is watching and saying, this title of the video is my entire day so far, label printer out of storage and back of life. Yeah, I understand that. So I hope that what we're talking about is actually going to be in line with what you're looking at. And so I'll go through a few steps. So this is the starting point. So this is a CSV file that's exported from a local line store. And there's a lot of similarities, but some differences with the Shopify one we looked at last week. And I'll just show a few things. So one of the important things is there's an order number that goes across the different order numbers. So here, lines 2 through 5, I'll just put those in green. They all correspond. Actually, let me change it. All the blue here corresponds to the same order. And what's a little bit different with Shopify is Shopify only showed the first line and then not as much information. And here the information is replicated from line to line, which is exciting. So we have some personal information, the names and emails. And then later on, we have the product name, so how it's being ordered, the format it's being ordered in, so spinach, a bag of it, and this person is picking up 2. Then there's some information about the sales, how much was made, and then at the end there's different, whether it's a delivery or pickup, and the pickup location. And so here I've created a couple different locations. One's on the farm, and then there's a couple that are off farm that I think show up later. And then whether it's paid or not. And so this is information that we're beginning with. And we'd like to turn all of this into a label. And so what that might look like is something like this. So we'd see the pickup is, it's the off farm on Wednesday, 2:30 to 3:30. And then the order number, the person's number, a phone number, the total value of the order, and whether it's paid or not. So if it says paid, it's been paid. And if it says pending, it still needs to be paid. And then everything that's in that order. And so this is a confirmation for the person pulling the order. Maybe the person pulling the order can follow that, or when the person receives it, they can see what that is. And so this is the tricky part. So each of these is a different field. So it's easy enough if you have a CSV file or a spreadsheet to link up using one of these apps we mentioned, like Autocrat or otherwise, to say what your order number is, to link up the different fields that you want in your label, and then to merge them into a Google Doc, and then to export it as a series of labels. But the orders, the ordered items, which are all on different lines, is where it gets a little bit trickier. And so what I'm going to show you is how to turn all these items into one cell that has the quantity and the item. And it's fairly simple, but I guess everything is once you know how to do it. And so I'll walk you through those steps. So here I've taken a snapshot of the order, the person's name, and then the products, the unit of quantity. And I'll walk through how we're trying to get this into one cell. The first step is we're going to use the good old ampersand. This is a simple simple spreadsheet tool, which is if you start off equals to open a formula, and then you choose two different cells like this one, and you put an ampersand in another cell, it'll link them together. Now, Google suggests that I autofill. I'm going to do that. So here you can see it says spinach and 2. And if I change the numbers here, I write 34, that changes. So the ampersand joins two things together. Now, what I want them to look like, so the end result here is 2x spinach 1 bag. So I'll do over here, the ampersand would be equals this cell, and then ampersand, and I'm going to put some text in. So text, I have to open the quotation marks, an X, a space, close the quotation marks. Actually, I put the ampersand here. So the ampersand, and then the product, and then ampersand, I'm going to put in quotation marks and a space, quotation marks, that's more text, and then ampersand here. And so this shows me 2 times the spinach in 1 bag. I can drag this down. And so this is now consolidating the different parts, the different columns into one thing. You could have them in separate columns to look them up, but the end result is going to be nice to have them in one place. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The next thing is I want to join this information together. So I'm going to do I'm going to join all these 4 cells together. So equals the join formula, and the join formula unites things together with a delimiter between them. So I'm going to open the quotation mark, put a comma, close the quotation mark. So that's like, I'm going to separate all the terms of this by a quotation mark, by a comma. And then I do another comma, and then I'm going to choose the range, which is this. Close the parentheses, enter. And now it has just put everything together into one long cell. If we wrap that, we'll see it's all sitting there. So this is pretty good so far. It's all in one place, but this is a mess to read. So we want to separate them. Now, if this was just a cell, so I'm copy pasting special, all this information was here and it wasn't from a formula, we could go in and we could push, Alt Command Shift, Alt Command Enter, and that would put them on different lines. So Alt Command Enter and so forth. And we could separate things that way, but we can't use that in a formula. So there's another trick we're going to use, and that is we're going to use the char function. And so the char function, so here the function we're going to look for is char 10, but char is refers to different characters. So if I do char 67, it brings up the letter C. Char 34 brings up a quotation mark. So they're different characters, Unicode characters. And the one that I'm looking to use, which we probably can't see if I enter it, is char 10, which even you can sort of see is a tab break or a line break. And so we want to use that to separate the different terms. So I'm going to bring this same formula over here. And instead of separating, I should actually have this be a little bit zoomed in. Sorry about not doing that sooner. So instead of separating by a comma, I'm going to separate by the char 10 formula. And I'm going to push enter. And now all of those show up one on top of the other. And so you can see them, they're all separated by a line break. And this is the end result that I want for that label. Now, what is tricky in this case is that we want to do this for a bunch of orders, and you can put together a formula to do it in separate cells. There's ways to do that. But what we're going to want to do instead is we're going to use a pivot table. And pivot tables are often the easy solution to a lot of things. And so what we're going to do to the pivot table is we're going to start off first by going back to our CSV. And I've actually added a column. I'll just reset this here. I've added a column at the beginning to join the information that we want in one line. So here, this B onwards, the background that's white, this is from the original CSV. Yellow background, this is from my, this is a formula I'm putting in here. And so if we check into there, we can see it's the same that we just did, which was the M2, which is that M2? Yeah, which is the quantity, and then ampersand, and then the text of X, space, quotation, and then ampersand, the text K2, which is spinach, and then the bag. And so I've entered that, and I've dragged it all the way down. So all the items here have it. And so now, so I've consolidated a bunch of columns into one place here at the beginning. And so now I'm going to do a pivot table. So I can highlight everything, click on data, choose pivot table. I'm going to do a new sheet. And in this new pivot table, what I'll do is I'm going to start off by putting a row. And so this shows me the different order numbers that we have, which is great. Now, if I were to add in the first line, which is for list, this shows me right now for one order, a bunch of different lines that are on it. Now, I want these all to be in one cell. And the pivot table doesn't instinctively do that, but we have a tool on hand, which is if we go to values. So normally when you use values, you could sum up, for example, so if we did so let's just, okay, if we keep these items here, we can, for a value, we could choose to add up the product subtotal. So this shows us the dollar value of this. Now, pivot tables are great for looking up numbers and adding numbers. And traditionally, they don't put text here. It's really numbers. But recently, there's some new formulas and new capacities that pivot tables have where you can bring some text into your pivot table by using formulas. And so we're going to delete the list and the values, and we're going to show how to do that. So if I go to add, and here it shows me all the different cells, but at the top is a calculated field. I'm going to go to calculated field, and the calculated field, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write join, open parentheses, and then that char 10 that we had, close parentheses. I'm going to do comma, and then I'm going to do a single quotation mark. I'm going to write the name of, I'll show you right here what it is. I'm going to write the for list. I'm going to call up this column. So I'll be joining the items in here. So when I do that, I go to here, and so it's for list. The spelling's important. single quotation mark, and then close parentheses, and I'll push enter. Now it shows me a bunch of zeros, and that's because it's summarized by sum. Instead, I'm going to do by custom, and okay, so what it's doing right, yeah, if we scroll down, so there's a bunch of X's first, and then afterwards, it's showing me what I want to see. Now these X's are, if I go to the bottom of the CSV, down where the order numbers end, the formula is dragging, just leaving an X behind because everything else is blank. I don't want to see that stuff, so I'm going to add in the filter in the pivot table editor, anything that the order number, I'm going to choose to filter by conditions, is not empty. So if the order number is not empty, we're going to see it. So I push OK, and it hides everything else. Now what we see is there's a cell, that's the number, and the order number, and in here is a cell with the contents of that order. And so this the pivot table, it's done for each of this. It's taken everything from this order number and it's joined it together, and then everything from this number and it's joined it together, and then everything from this number and joined together, and you get the idea. So here is how you'd get that together with a pivot table. Now, I have another pivot I've already put together a little further down with the label info. So in this pivot table, we have the delivery pickup location, the order number, the account name, the phone number, the order total, the status, and then the calculated field 1. And we could even replace that by calling it quantity and product. We can rename that field. And so now we have everything from one line about that order, and that corresponds to, on that sample label that I showed here. You know, these are the different tags. These are the different columns that I was looking at, and this is all from one line over here. Now, I'm not going to go into how to use the app to actually print this label, but if you look for different add-ons, Google add-ons, you can find Autocrat, Avery, other different add-ons that you can install onto your Google Sheets if you want, or install in another Google Sheet account that you have specifically for that if you don't want to give them permissions to everything on your account. And then you can, You can associate each of the columns to the different fields, and you can choose your label size, probably a 4x6 label, and then you'll have that, and you can do a merge, and you can send it off. But the trick here is really to get everything into one cell for the quantity and product. And that's what you can do using this calculated field. Again, in your, so if you're adding a new one, you could calculated field in the values, and you can use all kinds of other formulas too. But this is a way that you can work around your pivot table, so it doesn't only show numbers, but it also shows text, which is a recent discovery of mine, and I love it, and I'm definitely doing more with that. So that is how we go from a CSV file, such as this, into a such CSV file with a lot of detail, to a smaller chart or a smaller spreadsheet that has only the core information we want, with the contents of one order per line instead of multiple orders per line, which you can then, through an add-on, export into a label to look something like this. And then you're set. Print off, harvest some crops, pack them in the boxes, bring them to your drop-offs, your pickups, and deliver to some happy clients. So I hope that helps you. And that wraps up today's spreadsheet tip. Now, I'm always looking for new things and new challenges to crack with the spreadsheet. So if you have any burning farm spreadsheet questions, feel free to click on the link or go to the URL and fill out the form there and send me them. And they might make it into a future spreadsheet tip. Oh, I got to check. There's some typo right there. We don't like that, do we? So thank you so much for listening through this today. And I should be back next Thursday with another farmer spreadsheet tip about something wonderful and farming and spreadsheeting. So have a great week. In the meantime, happy farming.